All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. And we are going to push through the end of Lord of Chaos, which we should be able to do because there's a lot of stuff to skip over. I'm curious to see what the big ideas are to you here.
Uh, I like in the chapter we go into the human moment
Hmm.
that we get right before the big bang, realistically,
Oh,
where Loyal comes in and Rand and Perrin become just Rand and Perrin again, not Lord
yeah,
Perrin and the Emperor.
yeah. Uh, I mean, and it starts with a kind of a, you know, an almost friendly pastoral setting of them just sitting in their shirt sleeves, smoking a pipe, um,
Which I
under the
do
shade.
appreciate that he points out that Rand has the Lord's pipe. Or not Rand, Perrin. Perrin has
Mhm.
the wolf head pipe. Even though they're trying to like downplay the moment, he's got the Lord's pipe going.
uh,
But then we also get, which is great for today, because this is going to go up Thursday, but we're recording it on Valentine's Day. The whole Aerith moment. She is beautiful. She's beautiful. I mean, and she listens to me. She listens to me when I talk about the theories of blah, 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 blah.
yeah.
We get a little puppy love.
There's actually quite a bit of that running through these end chapters because you have Loyal talking about Aerith, and then you have Rand and Min
Mm-hmm.
and the way their relationship is growing, and then of course you have
Which is why it gets so horrible, because it's not the torture they do to Rand here in a minute.
mhm,
It's the other torture that kills him. And
yeah, yeah. And then you have poor Perrin and Fail, and her temperament as things as they have to deal with things. Um, and she even, I mean, yes, Rand's known Perrin a lot longer, but Fael knows him much more intimately.
mhm.
So she should understand who he is, which is right here on this first half page of chapter 49, The Mirror of Mists. Um, trying to Rand trying to get Perrin to go to Tyr. Uh, do you really want to be tied to my belt, Perrin? What I want hasn't seemed to count much since the first time we saw Moraine back in Emmons Field, Perrin said dryly. He sighed. You are who you are, Rand. If you fail, everything fails. Um, he is accepting and pretty simple. It's cut and dry. It's uh this is why he's the blacksmith and why it works so well and why that has to have been a major component on purpose for who Perrin was as a character, because that analogy fits so well. You know, measure twice, cut once. You think it through, make sure you have a plan, make sure you know what you're doing, but then once you start to strike that hot iron, you're committed and it is what it is. And it's either going to come out right or you're going to screw it up and you're going to make a heap of slag.
My stepfather, the one I liked, Tommy, at the end, he was a carpenter and he had a mug that said, I've cut this wood twice and it's still too short.
Oh, I love that. I need to try and find that for my dad. Uh and uh and we get as part of the nice friend moment, we get a reminder that Loyal is becoming corrupted because he likes to gamble now.
Oh, yeah, because of Gaul.
Yeah. Um
Which Gaul is one of those characters that we talk about, characters that leave for a while and then come back. We don't get him again till almost the end, realistically.
well, he's kind of always there with Perrin through his storyline, but he is kind of if you were watching this on screen, he would be a background character.
Mm-hmm.
He would always be there, and maybe he would say a short line or two, but he's not really doing much. He's scenery.
Like me in our one act play, I was a tree, but I
You were,
was the tree that did things, though.
yes,
Yes,
you were a good tree.
get my branches tangled in your sister's tiara.
Uh, I like the concern with Rand and Perrin here,
Mm-hmm.
thinking he needs longer in the steading, and that isn't what your mother says, Rand said seriously. I mean, he's genuinely concerned, and Loyal is genuinely terrified as he
Yeah,
jumps up and looks around. Oh God, is she here?
that's what I said. This is like a superhuman moment right
Mhm.
before we go into some dark shit.
Yeah, yeah, because it falls apart really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Well, I
I
think that's the point because it's the
yeah,
ambush is the point.
that well, I mean the falling apart here with Rand and Perrin and Loyal of so on 855 halfway down Rand trying to get Loyal to do something for him, and Light, Perrin growled disgustedly. He tapped out his pipe and ground the dawdle in the courtyard paving stone under his boot heel. Light, you send Matt off to face down Aes Sedai. You want to dump me in the middle of a war with Samael and a few hundred Two Rivers men with me. Some of them you know, and now you want to send Loyal off when he's only just arrived. Burn you, Rand. Look at him. He needs rest. Is there anybody you won't use? Maybe you want Fael to go hunting Monkhidian or Simmerhaj. Light, anger welled up in Rand, a tempest that made him shake. Those yellow eyes stared at him grimly, but he stared back like thunder. I will use anybody I must. You said it yourself. I am who I am, and I'm using myself up, Perrin, because I have to. Just like I'll use anybody I have to. We don't have a choice anymore. Not me, not you, not anybody. Uh, and I don't feel like this is a contradiction from just a second ago. This is who Perrin
Mm-hmm.
is yeah, you are who you are, and we're all kind of stuck doing things we otherwise wouldn't want to do, but it needs to be done. But at the same time, you can't go using people up. I mean, Rand just kind of admitted it there. I'm using myself up. Yeah, you can't use yourself up,
Hmm.
but likewise, you can't go using other people up.
Well, it's not a contradiction either with Perrin's character because when it was about just him, he was willing to
Hmm.
do the thing that needed to be done. But when it
Hmm.
came to being about Loyal and Fail and the Two Rivers men and everybody, he was willing to stand up.
Hmm. And then Loyal is the peacemaker,
Yeah.
which is as
Well,
it should
and
be.
put it in the deepest, most baritone voice you can do. James Earl Jones coming in there and setting the piece where it's calm, but at the same time you just have to look and listen. That's the one you liked Loyal in the series, and I kind of agree with you, but he needed a deeper voice.
Hmm. He he was one of the very few, even though the look was a little almost comical because it
Mm.
looked kind of cheap.
Well, yeah,
Um,
they made him look like a Rastafarian hippie, you know.
but that actor pretty well nailed the character.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
I wish they would have used a little bit of money to make him look bigger, and then a little bit to make his voice a little deeper. And other than that, yeah, we would have been gold.
mhm. Because the others at time there were others that at times were who they were supposed to be, like Lan at times is who he is supposed to be, and then he's howling and pounding on his chest, and you're going, who the hell is this and what is going on? But Perrin or Loyal was pretty spot on all the way through. Um,
Yeah, but we had a
quite possible.
fantastical element they didn't capture. We needed something bigger than humanity.
Yes.
And he was just a really big person.
Hmm.
Shaquille O'Neal would have stood over him, and we needed something that would have stood over Shaquille O'Neal to be
And
Ogier.
part of the problem, I think, too, is the the way Jordan describes their face is almost cartoonish. So that face, I think, can't look too human,
Hmm.
because part of the fun when you first meet Loyal is just how many people think he's a
A
Trolloc,
Trolloc, yeah.
you know. But then the more you look at him, the more those kind of cartoonish features don't look monstrous at all. And there's a point where Rand is wondering, did I ever think, how could I have thought this was a Trolloc? Um, because of
Yeah. I think you could have accomplished that with just the monstrous size, though.
Yeah,
I- the other part is just details. It's you walk in and you see something 8 foot tall, automatically puts you in an alarm phase, and then you notice it has a gentle face. That comes after, and so we could have had a very human face, but the size be the indication of it being Ogier.
yep. Um, moving along. Um, all right, so 862, that we get the confrontation with the Aes Sedai, because they're, as we talked about last time, they're not really thinking straight because of their arrogance and because they don't understand Rand and they don't understand the situation. So of course they leap to he did this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even
Which
though
I
it makes
think
no
we have a
sense.
comment about that as well.
Okay. So when the big kerfuffle ends, Mullane says, um, the Katarkarn handled them well. They must be taken by the scruff of the neck and taught honor, though they weep for it. Um, what do you think about how Rand handled that?
Like a 20-year-old male.
There was no who there, some why wasn't there a single person to go, what the hell are they talking about and what's going on here? Um,
Yeah, that's the disconnect. Well, and that's an information. Remember, we're in an information age. We have the
mhm,
internet, we have TV, we have cell phones, we have all of that. Whereas he didn't know anything until this was all going on. And when you're reactionary, as a
yeah.
young man would be, it changes the game a little
Well,
bit.
and it helps, there's always set up for the payoff is this is not a contrived moment because Jordan has taken a lot of time to uh alienate Rand from Aes Sedai who aren't Moraine.
Hmm.
And then also, to Mullane's point, also the wise ones.
Hmm.
So there is none of the um uh deference that they once felt towards Aes Sedai because they served them and failed them. There's none of that anymore. They now see them for all of their faults. And it's the pendulum's kind of tipping over a little too far in one direction because all they see are the faults. But
Hmm.
so she's not going to play the peacemaker there because she has contempt for the Aes Sedai now. So
Yeah,
there.
well, we get back to our in-group, out-group discussions that we've had over the course of this
Mhm.
whole freaking podcast. Is they're all out groups to each other. The common denominator is the guy who's struggling through it all, and he's a young man, very young man,
Mhm.
with a voice in his head, by the way.
With a voice in his head.
Yeah. And his dealings with women who actually have his back are in lust. So we've got lots of things that affect your decision making.
So the one person who did say what's going on here and could have played the intermediary can't because she's a double agent. because you get that as soon as it switches to Min's perspective
Mm-hmm.
of chewing her underlip. She thought furiously. There were two problems as she saw it. First, Rand and his demands for respect, whatever he meant by that. If he expected Marana to curtsy with her head to the floor, he was going to have a long wait. And in the meantime, he had surely put their backs up. There had to be some way she could smooth that over, if she could just see how. The second problem was the Aes Sedai. Rand seemed to think this was some sort of snit that he could end by putting his foot down. Min was not certain. Aes Sedai had snits, but if they did, she was sure this was something more serious. The only place to find out, though, was the Crown of Roses. So she's actually going to take the initiative to try and figure out what's going on here
Mm-hmm.
and to try and smooth it over, because this is more than Rand is certain this is just Aes Sedai arrogance and trying to always bully and take control. And Min is recognizing because of that, he's letting his ego run out of control and trying to one up everything they do. But then, of course, her attempts to figure out what's going on gets interrupted because 13 is an unlucky number. So, and again, it's not a contrivance because Jordan has put all these breadcrumbs down before. We had already, or he had mentioned a couple of times the uh who is it? Karuna and somebody, I can't remember their names, uh who had been sent off and then have to backtrack, and so he had put that breadcrumb down there before, so it's not a total surprise that they show up here and throw everything into chaos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Karuna's the one that's stronger than Varen, right? So she takes control.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. She's got the seniority and the power to take charge. Yeah. Um I love the way Min plays the warder here. I also I like, just this little blurb of a character that we don't see again, Mahiro. But he's he comes into being fully fleshed out and feeling very real, which is, again, something Jordan does masterfully.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then everything goes to heck. And
I
off they go to
actually no, I
Kareen.
think that's an important point because you said I like how Min plays the warder here. And this is one of the masterful moments of Jordan was we have a whole 5.5 books of Min being the warders, men men being the warders, and then all of a sudden we have Min jumping into that role,
Mhm.
and we haven't even gotten to the point in the books where we have male Ashaman, right? So we're getting a little bit of a taste for it right here of how the complementary characters work in.
Mhm. Um, all right, so then they set everything up. Gaul and Bane and Chiad pop back in. Um, Rand writes his snarky letter. Um, and you see right away that Karuna is just going to make things worse
Mm-hmm.
because so on 871, when it switches to their perspective, getting the letter that anyone could send such a letter to Aes Sedai disgusts me. He's a freaking emperor, so there is that.
But
And
at the same time, we have a whole lifetime of being
mhm.
the voice of above emperors and kings, and
So much so
even
that
Arthur Hawkwing didn't
mhm,
didn't penetrate
yes,
the tower. Yeah.
the one place he could not conquer was Tar Valon. But I mean, he really
Isn't it a little bit ironic that the one place the strongest man in the world couldn't conquer was the big giant dildo?
uh anyway, so Jordan lays it on a little thick here with the
Happy Valentine's,
arrogance
everyone.
because while they're you've got the arrogance of how could someone send a letter like this, and they're not even giving him their full attention because they're still also distracted by Taim in the Black Tower. They feel like they should be able to do something about that while they're here. And so and then they okay, so here is it. Where is it? This is where um oh, before we get to that, this part is interesting too. At the bottom of 873. If you had to bond a man without asking him, Karuna demanded in that commanding voice, why by the light most holy have you not used the bond to bend him to your will? Compared to the other, that is only slapping the wrist. Has no one told you? She asked too brightly. I suppose no one wants to think of it. I certainly do not. Theldrin and Sion had looked at the floor, and they were not the only ones. I tried to compel him moments after I bonded him. Have you ever attempted to uproot an oak tree with your bare hands, Karuna? It was much the same. Which, cat, that's my water. Dang it. Oh, son of a. Guess I gotta go get a
You got to
refill
put some spice in that water so the cat doesn't like it.
Even just trying to pull up a sapling is a pain in the butt until you cut out some of those roots. And Karuna and Bera, the newcomers, are utterly shocked as Bera actually muttered, "That's impossible, impossible." How many times? I mean, and 2 pages before, they had already been confronted with an impossibility because he's rediscovered traveling. How many times must he do the impossible before you stop treating him like you would treat any other situation in the world? They're treating him like an upstart ruler, like they would treat any upstart ruler, and it just so happens that he can channel and that he's the Dragon Reborn of prophecy,
or also a young warder that you bonded and you can expect certain things from. But I would like to postulate and put into the equation what the difference in the brain would be from accepting a bond versus being forced upon a bond. Because again, we're talking about this in a wiring sense. You're going in there and you're hitting these synapses, right? If the synapses were set up in a I'm ready for this moment versus what the fuck just happened moment, you could see how there would be a difference just in that. And then add the channeling, add the two river stubbornness, add the fact that he's Tavaren, which bends the pattern in itself. So add all those other things, but just the mental state going into the bonding would be different. And I would also, this thought just came to me as I was speaking, wonder what the connection with bonding is to compulsion, where Grendel and Ravine and all of these other, they use compulsion to a T, and they were surprised with the new discovery of bonding, right? How close are those two things together?
That's an interesting thought. That is the likely evolution of where it came from. In during the breaking when Aes Sedai came up with it, is it probably tugs on that thread.
Yeah, it probably tugs on that thread, and you can force your warder to do something, but at the same time, the difference is you give a little something back in that same thing. So it's like a mutual compulsion.
All right. So the point I was getting to with the Aes Sedai was 875, when Morana is trying to take back control of this embassy. Don't you see, she shouted, you talk as if we can go on as before, as if nothing has changed. There is an embassy from Elida in Karheen, from the White Tower. That is how Althor must see it. We need him more than he needs us, and I fear he knows it. Which
Is correct.
is a big effing. I mean, remember, she's a gray, and
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to negotiation, if the other side knows you need them more, then you're gonna have a tough time getting concessions.
Well, and
Um,
again, one of Jordan's setting things up kind of things. Morana becomes an important person later, and she's the one that sees the thing that
and,
nobody else can see.
and I hadn't really thought of it before, is that how important she becomes to Rand's inner circle later on, and how much she was the one of the first ones to get it, that things have changed, things are different now. And I like the for a moment, shock covered every face, save Varen's. Varen only nodded thoughtfully, smiling a small secretive smile, because she knew it absolutely from the
Yeah,
beginning.
Varen's my spirit animal.
All right. And off they go to Karheen, and poor Perrin. Um,
Poor Perrin, poor Sullen, poor Min, poor everybody that's in Rand's life.
well, and even Rand a little bit here too, because
Oh no, definitely Rand.
this
Yeah.
this is one of my annoyances with how the Gawain story goes, because this little sentence down at the bottom here um should carry a lot more weight. In that same return note, Rand also asked Gawain to visit. He had only met Elaine's brother once, but he liked the man. Gawain never came, though, and he never replied. And Rand has absolutely no idea why. Um, and then we get Herod fell again, and I love the uh, do not bring girl, too pretty. um, where is it?
Well, just to tie things into our deeper meanings, this is where Herod fell gets a little bit Nietzsche.
hmm,
You have to tear everything down before you can rebuild, kind of talk, which is
mhm.
we found over time is not exactly the right way to do it, but at the same time there is some legitimacy to it, and we see it with the seals. You have to break them before you can remake them, kind of thing. But not to get too political, but we see a little bit of that in our other talks.
Yep. Okay, so this is what I was getting to, is um Min and Bearlane interacting. So it's at the bottom of 883. Um for several long moments, Rand might as well not have existed. Bearlane openly eyed Min up and down. Min forgot about the sitting room. She put her hands on her hips and stood there with one knee bent, studying Bearlane just as openly. They smiled at each other. Rand thought the hair on his head would stand up when they did that. He was minded of nothing so much as two strange cats who had just discovered they were shut up in the same small room. Apparently
Okay,
deciding.
so I love men in these books, but I also love Barrelane.
Mhm. Yeah, and the analogy is correct. Two strange cats, female
Mm-hmm.
cats, in a room together, and they're eyeing each other up. They're eyeing each other to decide, to try and establish a pecking order. Uh, Deciding there was no point hiding now, Min walked. Undulated would have been a better word. She managed to make Bearlane's way of walking look like a boy's. and sat with one knee over the other, still smiling. Light how those women did smile.
Which is funny because we had the Min Fail interaction in the last episode, and it's kicked up to 11 here with Barrelane.
Because Berlane gives off that aura of always being a flirt.
Mm-hmm.
She gives off that aura of attracting. She very obviously wants all male eyes in the room on her. And it's not just the way she dresses. It's all of the, you know, intangibles in body language that men pick up on subconsciously and women notice both consciously and subconsciously because they do it too. And
Which
then
is
they don't like it.
really, really, really funny because you see this with waitresses and performers or whatever, and those tend to actually be the most picky people with their mates
Mm-hmm.
because they can.
Mm-hmm.
They have the selection to choose from, whereas the ones that are prudish tend to go with the first thing available. And Barrelane gets a bad reputation because of the way she is,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, notice in the entirety of what was she first appeared in book 3, right?
Yeah, at the very end of book 3.
Very end of book 3, the entirety of her existence in the books, she hasn't been with a partner yet.
Mm-hmm.
She's been choosing the partner that she could that is most beneficial to her at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you know, someone who has very few options just jumps wherever they go. And
Well, and she is also a strong believer in the, you know, don't give the milk for free. So
mhm.
she's using that possibility to uh uh to lead men on to get what she wants. And the reason that the Fail men interaction was so different is because they eyed each other up because immediately this is a threat. I need to size this person up to establish the social pecking order. But then very quickly, you know, I think the unspoken thing there is that
They were already attached
they
to
both
the
realized that
opposite,
the
yeah.
other was wholly attached at the hip to the other, so they were no threat whatsoever.
Where
Okay, so now we
Barrelane is
can be
still looking
friends.
for advantage. Yeah.
Barrelane is still looking for advantage, so as you said, Min cranks it up to 11, uh, and and puts on the sexy.
Yeah, which the sex after that, by the way, is the best.
Poor Perrin wouldn't know because and this was what I was getting why I wanted to get to this
Oh
point
no,
is
he
because
talks about
then
the nails tearing his back up.
eventually,
Yeah.
but
Oh no,
the
no, you're talking about Barrelane. No, but Barrelane in book 3 though. He got the
no, yeah,
nails.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but Fael's interaction with Barrelane, even though she knows, we know from her own perspective, she knows Perrin wouldn't give another woman a second glance, not in any kind of romantic or physical way, that he is wholly hers, and yet she reacts completely differently. She reacts with open hostility towards Bearlane
Mhm.
and acting like
Well,
she is.
except that she has an inner knowledge, the hormonal knowledge that is going through her system because remember, Min is the truth sayer, right?
Mm,
So this is where they all come together. Realistically, we're talking about these two couples, but they all come together here. A spoiler alert. Let me spoiler alert here. But Min has said, "Wait till the uh." So Fail is the falcon. Barrelane is the eagle or the hawk. Eagle.
Hawk, because
Yeah,
that
hawk.
was
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
symbol of Hawk
yeah,
Wing,
yeah.
and
So the
that's she's
hawk.
the
Yeah,
symbol.
yeah. So wait till the hawk comes along. And that's the big difference. The
Mm-hmm.
hawk is there, and Perrin has something inside himself that wants the hawk as well. And with Rand and Min, that's non-existent. And with Min and Fail, that's non-existent. But what we have coming later, and then I'll end spoilers here. We'll talk about that more here in a second.
Okay, you were right. The cold shoulder comes later. Um
Well, because
uh,
Min understands that this is the Hawk coming along. I think she gets that it's going to be a problem for Perrin here in a minute.
well, I meant with Fail, the giving Perrin the cold shoulder comes later. The
Mm.
first 888 is the first interaction. When Fail returned a short time later, she took 2 steps into the bedchamber and began radiating the smells of jealousy and rage, prickly and knife sharp, a blend that should have made his nose bleed. Perrin did not understand. He could still smell Berelane's perfume, but his sense of smell was nearly as acute as Wolf's. Surely Fail could not. It was very strange. Fail smiled. Not one untoward word passed her lips. She was as loving as ever, and even more fierce than usual, raking deep furrows into his shoulders with her
Mm-hmm.
fingernails, which she had never done before. Afterwards, examining the bleeding gouges by lamplight, she nipped his ear with her teeth, not at all lightly, and laughed. In Saldea, she murmured, we notch a horse's ear, but I think that will do to mark you. And the whole while she fairly reeked of jealousy and rage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So be careful. If you've had the best sex of your life, guard your back, guys.
But I think now uh we don't get the same perspective because Rand can't have that perspective of Min. Plus, he hasn't completely figured out that she has the hots for him. But I don't get, I mean, there's jealousy there, but I don't pick up any bit of rage from Min at all. Her reaction is jealousy and pride that
No, no,
she's
no.
going.
And this is a different. Okay, so we teased the cuck thing in the last episode that you'll see here. Uh, there is that sense. Okay, so I'll give a personal experience on this. So I was a groomsman in a wedding a few years ago, and the significantly younger than I am, and the bridesmaids were I don't know. Apparently, it was fun to hang out with the dude that was on the other side that looked good in a suit, right? And a third party told me, "Well, your wife was really happy that all these girls paid a lot of attention to you because he's going home with me." And so let's take that into a celebrity kind of standpoint. Pete Davidson, the dude's fucking ugly. He's not even that funny,
Mhm.
but he gets with the hottest models because the first model begot the next model, begot the next model, begot the next model, right? The fact that these girls want him makes the other girls want him more. Welcome to the mind of women, my friends.
You commented on that years ago of how come I get more attention now from women that I have this on than I ever did when I was single.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but it's not
Well,
just so
especially
there.
since I mean, shout out. I know she doesn't watch this podcast, but because she's beautiful and highly intelligent. But yeah, women love status, and this is not a knock. This is evolutionary, right? Women love status. They want a high status male, and the fact that other women want that guy is status.
Mhm.
It really plays through in unfortunate ways, which we see with Perrin, but at the same time, it's true. It's just the way of the world, and you have to embrace it.
Well, it's part of Fail's nature and her temperament.
Mhm.
We saw a little bit of that
Well,
when,
and even the highest status women are the most aggressive about it, which is good because you want them to be, because you want a strong woman.
but the way they react so differently. Men's way of reacting is to crank the sexiness up to 11 and say
Mhm.
anything you can do, I can do better. And
Well,
he's not even going to look at you that way.
the
But
reason I
I
love
get it.
men is because she's me. She's high in openness and she's high in agreeableness. So those two things lead to that behavior where
Hmm.
it's not I'm going to push you away from this other person. I'm just going to do better. And I'm going to make you not want this other person.
Yeah. Uh,
Versus the jealous type, the typical male is going to be not only am I going to uh be the best I can be, but I'm also going to beat this guy up or something along those lines.
and I
Yeah.
think we've actually mentioned this before, is that Fail demonstrates much more masculine traits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so she's rather than, uh
Well,
displaying
yeah,
it,
her top two traits are probably conscientiousness and extroversion,
and
where Perrin is the opposite.
and so
Yeah.
her reaction is, so Rand thinks of, his analogy as two cats, strange cats that have been locked in the same room, but it doesn't, it might begin that way, but it doesn't end that way. It ends that way with Fail. The hair's going to puff up and the claws are going to come out because
Mm-hmm.
she's going to be confrontational.
Which is fun sometimes, by the way. But just saying.
But it's not fun for Perrin, and the I think the reason being that uh because File can never get that sense of achievement because she can't do to Berlin what she wants to.
Mm-hmm.
Um the Berlin is actually surprisingly adept physically because she has to be, because Tyr likes to send assassins after her. And then of course Rourke stepped in and interrupted it last time. So, and because she's important now, so she can't just stab her. And they have status, so she can't get in a cat fight in the middle of the hall. So she can't ever win, and she takes it out on Perrin.
Yeah, let's finish that in spoilers
Mm-hmm.
and let's go on with the book real quick. Because we got a lot to get through.
Yeah,
In just a few pages, we got a lot to get through.
yeah. Uh, well, chapter 51 is the taking.
Yeah.
Um,
So long story short, Rand overreacts to the Saladar Aes
mm,
Sedai and puts himself in a trap.
overreacts there, underreacts here.
Mm-hmm.
Because he thinks it's all under control. Um, and uh, I like the way this chapter ends from Cerilia's perspective. And
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. We this is where we really start to see her as a main character.
mhm.
Yeah.
and you see the way she's thinking things through, that she understands more than others something is very wrong here. And
Mm-hmm.
though she's still Cerelia on the outside, you actually get a sense of panic from her
Mm-hmm.
because
Which
Rand is
I
that
saw a
important.
meme that was very disrespectful to Cadsuane, and it was in regards to Moiraine. Moiraine is replaced by blah 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 blah, and I'm like, no, but Cadsuane and Cerelia are the next step.
Mm,
They were the wise versions of Moiraine.
yeah, they knew from the beginning what Moraine finally figured out at the end. Um, and then you're muted.
Sorry for the hiccup there, but my lip is split from here to here now. So we're trying to stop the bleeding.
At least it wasn't your eyeball this time.
Yeah, yeah. These fucking dogs. I love them.
Was it?
Oh,
Wait, no, it wasn't Hamilton last time, was it? It was
no,
Freddie.
it was Ace. Ace.
Ace.
Ace is the one that poked my eye out. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. For those that don't know in the audience, which is I guess everybody at this point. I had a dog do the, oh, I love belly scratches, and he poked his nail right into my eyeball, and I was blind for 2 weeks. This time, no, it was just I'm excited to be home after my treatment for excessive heartworms or whatever it was, and he busted my lips. So, oh,
All right. Well, I was about to
mm,
say, I think we can just skip the next chapter because it's a lot of um uh it's a lot of setup for things. Really, it's this chapter is basically setting up the main storylines in the next book.
mm,
Um, and the best part is the very end when
mm,
my role
mm.
that probably hurt a lot, didn't it?
Alcohol.
Yeah, that'll clean it
Oh,
out though. That'll clean it
yep.
out.
Oh.
Um,
All right, we're good. It's like
right.
jumping in
So
that pool in the first thing in the morning.
the best part of the chapter is when Land shows back up finally. Uh,
Was that here? I thought that was in the next book.
no, it's here. It
Okay.
happens at the end of this book, and then he, actually,
Hmm.
it's just like a cameo here, as he looks like hell, because he was compelled to go to her, but he also still had the effects of having lost his Aes Sedai, so he wouldn't turn away from any fight.
Hmm.
So he and his horse were beat to heck.
It would have been best if he was on Bella.
Clearly.
No, it Mandar, but it has to be Mandar.
Okay. The Feast of Lights. Uh, I think we've mentioned this before, and it just no, bad cat. You do not get my water or my vodka. Um, we've kind of mentioned this before about how repressed the Karhinen are, how prudish they are,
Hmm.
and rigid societally. And so now you get the Feast of Lights, which is like
It's Mardi Gras.
I was gonna say carnival, only worse.
No, no, no. This is definitely a reflection of Mardi Gras with the French and their prudishness, and then they have Mardi Gras, and we're
Okay, I've never been to
we're
Mardi Gras, but the pictures I've seen of Carnival are even
mm.
more
Well,
so.
yeah, yeah. It's the American version of the thing in France. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's you know, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone just full on in body paint at Mardi Gras. They're not wearing much, but they're at least
Oh,
wearing
yeah.
something.
That's normal, dude.
Okay. I've
Yeah.
s- I've seen lots from Carnival that was, I don't think this is legal to be out in public, even in France or Brazil.
So those that follow all our episodes, my last name is actually French, if you can tell.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh and I actually your name keeps coming up in one of the YouTube history channels I watch because they're talking about Napoleon's battles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he was actually the good guy. So for those that are historical buffs, apparently Napoleon kept exiling him because he wouldn't burn down villages and stuff. So,
Well, and it's also probably why he was probably Napoleon's most adept marshal, but Ney was Marshal Ney was Napoleon's right hand man,
mhm,
and that was because he was more acceptable politically.
mhm,
Whereas and towards the end, one of the things that kind of fell apart was Ney wasn't able to do what needed to be done tactically, whereas Saint-Cyr
mhm.
was. And his core was the one that tended to hold. Uh, anyway, so point being, it is amusing uh to see what's going on out and about. You get lots of eye candy in your mind, and and then you get where oh, and then we get Dobrain. The To me, the best part of this chapter is introducing Dobrain as a more major character
Hmm.
and getting his personality of he is a great example of how, the dragon will break all bonds, and it kind of breaks Dobrain, but in a good way. Whereas
Hmm.
in other places we've seen the breaking
Well, yeah,
because
yeah, we see that in several characters, the ones I appreciate. We see that in Dobrain, we see that in Tominese. Uh, Elias is another one. Trying to think of across all the bounds. Gaul, we talked about earlier. Uh,
Mhm,
and the positive breaks are the ones that are the most inspiring characters, I think.
mhm. Because yeah, like Gaul sticks
Even
with
even
Perrin.
even even if we go to Narum,
Mm,
he became a loyal servant based on this whole breaking, but it was well within his personality
mhm,
to do so. And those are the moments where I think Jordan really transcend a lot of fantasy authors, because the regular fantasy author would say, this makes sense, let's go with the story. Whereas we got into the character of just the bit points. Moghedian is a great example.
mm.
She stayed in character the whole time.
That's a good point. That because what's broken, so to speak, about Dobrain is he stops playing the game of houses,
Mm-hmm.
which is ingrained, and we've talked about that
Which is
too.
ingrained, but he hated.
Ingrained, but he hated, and
Yeah.
it was reinforced with the Karhinen Civil War and then the Aiel invasion because he's not just a lord, he is a competent commander, a competent
Mm-hmm.
general. And so Rand coming along and giving him someone that he can follow in a martial hierarchy is fitting with his personality. And so he's sworn to Rand, and by golly, he's going to abide by that. Whereas everybody else, and we've seen it quite a bit with Rand, Simon Karheen, everybody else is scheming,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not. And he comes to Perrin and is shockingly direct in laying out what is going on rather than, you know, coming up with some way to insinuate. That way you can have plausible deniability. He just comes right out and says, Colliver is doing this, this and this are going on. It means something's up and it's not good.
Mm-hmm. So you get an instance of someone who understands the game of houses. Well, realistically, he's still playing it, but he's using the understanding of it to help the person above him versus the understanding of it to elevate himself.
He's using it to make sure he knows what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
not for his own advancement, which is what the Game of Houses is supposed to be, but for the advancement of the goal, of the overall goal of Rand, his sworn lord. Uh,
Which realistically, if we want to put a negative connotation on it, is what he thinks is his best avenue for his own goal. He
yeah.
he's just basically, unlike a lot of other people in the game, has accepted the fact that he will be an underling of some sort, but he wants to be the best underling that is in the equation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, let's see. Oh, and then the next best part of this chapter is when Sulin finally ends her penance and starts yelling at the other, uh yeah, here it is. So at 926, uh she goes and flings open the door. Uh Wipe your face, Luane. Sulin snapped. Luane's grin was indeed wiped away. Um, and sends them running. Just immediately snaps back into a position of authority. Um,
Okay.
and
The best part is, and I will give you what
stop.
Rourke gave you. Stone of Tear,
Oh yeah,
which we've implied is a good spanking.
and not the sexy kind.
No, 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 no. Uh,
Um,
the fatherly kind.
all right, and then it ends reinforcing Dobrain's loyalty and sincerity, and also the trouble they're in. As Perrin asks how many Karheen will fight Aes Sedai, the curl went out of Dobrain's lip. I will, Lord Abira, he said stiffly. I and my 500. And that's it. That's all that he can count on. Is just
Mm-hmm.
his own personal guard. Uh, that's all he has. Um, and then it shifts to what's going on. And as you pointed out, um, Min is really what triggers Rand over the edge. It's bad enough what they're doing to him
Mm-hmm.
as far as the physical torture goes, and that does take a toll, and we do see it later, but what they do to Min is what sends him into a rage.
Well, and this is where again, people who follow everything jump in that ice water every morning.
Mm.
I'm used to it right now. I'm actually wondering what the next step is, right? So you torture yourself, it plays a toll, but at the same time, it is what it is. You kind of fall into a routine. But if I was forced to throw somebody in the ice water every morning, it would haunt me what their experience was, right? And so they tortured Rand and he was hurt and he was all these things from it. But at the same time, he could deal with it. But when you're talking about a man, you take somebody they love and you put them in that ice water. It's a different story. I think Jordan really pulled that out, and this is why The Dragon Reborn was my favorite, but Lord of Chaos was my second favorite book
Mm.
because it really pulled at you and it made you hurt inside just reading the text. So
Yeah, so 932 is when they finally mention he's been hinting at what's going on here from Galena's perspective, and not just trying to break through the shield, but killing a warder with his bare hands and severely wounding another with the dead man's sword to such an extent that the second died in the healing. All that in the moments required for the sisters to overcome their shock and bind him with the power. Um, and then you get another little nugget here, in case you hadn't figured out yet that Galena's not a good person, is that she's using the trauma of losing her warder to groom Arian to get her in the sack. That starts here. It comes up more later, but it starts here. So just in case you weren't sure from her snobbery and her disdain for everyone around her that Galena's not a good person, here you go. All right.
she would be the Amber Heard of this story.
Yeah. Um, so
We got so many things to talk about, and we got a week off, man.
again, there's almost nothing is accident here. So Jordan has been building up Luz Theron's voice.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because of the stress and strain that he's under, now Rand actually starts to have a dialogue, not just shout at him, not just try and shut him away. He actually starts to have a dialogue, and Luz Theron responds and starts to teach Rand how to do things. That's
Which
a
is
major escalation.
well, no, but this is funny because we have a term in modernity that we use. Uh, we call it old soul, right? Where someone has maturity beyond their years, right?
Mm,
Well, Rand has old soul. He's 21 years old ish at this point, but he has the experience of someone who has been through all of these things. And Jordan is really playing out that Rand has this old soul that helps him through this process that is probably the worst thing we could all experience. Not only is it physical pain, but it's mental pain watching a loved one be tortured. So it's a caricature, but at the same time, God, that's why it's the best series in
hmm
recent history, at least.
Yeah.
Only probably rivaled by Tolkien.
Certainly as far as depth of the world goes and depth
Mm-hmm.
of the characters. Um, all right. So, um, the sending. So as we skip through most of this chapter because it's just the chase to get there, and then um he rather reluctantly reaches out for the wolves. Not
Mm-hmm.
not just reluctant to touch that mind again because he's still wary of that, still wary of losing himself, but then knowing what that will mean physically, that they're going to have to pay a price, and many of them will die. So he's he's wary of that, but the the stakes are such that he can't not do it. So he has to send for the wolves, and then the other interesting part to me is, so not just the conflict in Perrin's mind to reach out to the wolves and tell them what has happened, but then when he tells them, when he passes on the scent and their name for Rand, Shadow Killer,
Mm-hmm.
the wolves respond overwhelmingly. Like they immediately start howling and passing the word and come running. That that's the impact that Rand has had on these animals. Um, the the other interesting thing about this chapter
No, wait.
is
Let's stay on that point for a second.
okay.
Uh, we see that with nature, right? So if a wildfire is coming, one of the first signs is all the animals running your way, right? But so to be more specific to our life, we go out in the kayak and we go fishing. What's one
Mhm.
of the things you look for?
Oh, are you looking for birds feeding?
Yeah, looking
Looking
for
for,
the
yeah.
birds. You look for the birds, right? So this semi metaphorical to the wildlife and the extension of life in general, right? Is all connected, and I think Jordan wanted to put that point forward.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Now I'm curious about your thoughts here. So the end of the chapter is fun,
My thoughts are all over the place. So
but specifically the the leadership conflict amongst the Aiel and how it is resolved. So, uh, so Nandera has been leading the maidens for a while because Sulin has been doing this Giotto penance. So now you have this conflict of Sulin trying to reassert leadership, and the way it comes to a head and the way they try and resolve it is to beat the ever living crap out of each other. And then mirroring this is this conflict between Amos and Cerilia.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to a head for them, they go off together and they sip water and have a chat under the moonlight.
It's personality types. And it completely makes sense because with the maidens, there is a tactical thing about it, but at the same time, it's still physical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, but with the wise ones, ultimately, it's cerebral. So you're going to pick your challenge based on how you live your life. And this is where male female kind of goes out of it because we have people of a certain tendency competing with each other versus another tendency competing with each other. So, yeah, on the bell curve, there are women that are more physical than men. And on the bell curve, there are women that are more cerebral than men. So, this is just two variations of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's a big deal.
Well, what's interesting to me, more so even than the way they do it, is then what happens. So on 953 down at the bottom, Perrin assumed that Sulin would do the talking from then on, but such was not the case at all. She was still there, but a bruised Nandera answered Roark's questions and took his commands, while an equally bruised Sulin kept silent, and when Nandera asked Sulin to do something, she did it without hesitation. Perrin could only scratch his head and wonder whether he actually had seen the fight end as he thought it had. But there's I, I'm curious what you think, but to me this is because this is a blending of the masculine and the feminine. They're still women, even if they act more masculine. And a guy, a guy would be okay. I won the fight, so I'm the winner. But I think
Yeah,
what's going on here
it,
is that for
except we
Sulin,
have modern pop theory to go on this. Why was Rocky so good?
mm, yeah, because he went the
Rocky
distance.
didn't win.
He went the distance. He took it
Yeah,
to decision,
yeah.
and so Nandera earned Sulin's respect
Mm-hmm.
simply by fighting her and by, giving as good as she got, even though in the end she lost the fight.
Mm-hmm.
So
No.
she,
So I can take this personal. I don't know if you remember this, if you were part of it because it was the in crowd and you were kind of one of the nerds, but I fought one of my brother's best friends at a football game. So we would have been sophomores and he was a senior. And I got my ass kicked. But everybody was like cool with me after that, even though I got my ass kicked by Eric. And this is the same situation. She basically punched up.
mhm.
If you punch up and you I guess show yourself would be the way to say it. If you show yourself when you're punching up, even if you don't win, you garner respect from everybody. And all of a sudden I was like 10 notches more popular after that, even though he beat the shit out of me. It it's just the way it works. It's people's perspective of you.
Well, we don't know exactly, but I get the impression that Sulin's um time as a wetlander maid was like months long,
Mm-hmm.
you
Oh
know,
yeah.
like
We're
6 weeks to
talking
a couple
time scales
months.
of a year or a month or
So
yeah.
so she's been out of the loop for a while, And now she's recognizing Nandera has earned her place. She has earned the leadership. It's not, she didn't just take it, she's earned it. But with the wise ones, the next morning, the rest of the wise ones still shifted from group to group, but before the long column had covered 3 miles, Perrin realized that all centered on Cerelia now. Now and then she and Amos went off to one side of the road by themselves to talk, but there were no more glares. Had they been wolves, Perrin would have said a challenge to the pack leader had been defeated. But by their sense, Cerelia accepted Amos as almost an equal now, which did not fit wolves at all.
Well,
Again, same
it did
thing,
not
just a
fit. It
different
did
way of
not
feeling
fit
it.
men at all. It was the
Yes,
problem. Yeah, yeah. So he's thinking as a wolf, but he's also thinking as a man.
because men are more
Hmm.
instinctual.
And as we talked about last time, she formed a coalition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
The strength of her coalition was greater than the strength of Amos. Or the other way around. Was it Amos that won out?
no, Cerelia won out.
Okay, so yeah,
So
the strength of her coalition was greater than the strength of Amos, but Amos was a worthy adversary.
and was because their way of hashing it out was talking. So a worthy adversary bringing uh bringing something to the table intellectually and philosophically. So we don't know
Mhm.
what they talked about, but you have to think that Amos wanted to know, or Cerelia wanted to know what were Amos's aims? What did she think about what was going on? What did she think should be done? Okay, I can work with this person.
Well, and we also have to add the metaphysical, right? They've also seen future lives.
Yeah, that too. They and they have the dreaming. All right.
No, I'm talking about Ridian
Oh yeah, yeah.
in the
Oh, that's right.
circles.
The first test. I was thinking
Yeah,
about the
because
columns, but
remember, Avienda slept with Rand because she saw the future lives, right?
yeah, she saw it in Smart
Moiraine
Fate.
stood up to Lanfear because she saw the future lives. Every single wise one has seen the future lives except Savannah.
That's a good point. Um, all right. So I like Karuna being the one that takes charge here and the one that's speaking for the Aes Sedai because she's such a great example of someone who must learn the hard way.
I always imagined her as really freaking hot.
I think she's described as very striking.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like
She's like the
like model hot, like sharp features,
mhm.
tall. Um,
She's like Heidi Klum or something. Yeah.
let's see here. And Perrin is just nonplussed. Nope. You can
He's
join
Jay
me.
Cutler.
Yeah. You
Never
can
wins
join
Mr.
me. Yep.
Olympia, but he's always buff as shit.
Um, all right. And then we get to chapter 55, Do Might As Well. Um,
Yeah, that's dark.
man, this is dark, and this is like this the series equivalent of that opening 10 minutes of Saving Private Ryan. I think
I would agree with that assessment. Yeah.
and it's why it's one of my favorite battle scenes in the entire series. It's so well done and it really sucks you in to the moment, to the danger of the moment, to the brutality of the moment. And I think it's helped by the fact that he hops to several different perspectives during the battle.
Hmm.
Um,
Well,
starting,
I would also say it's a okay. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched it. The boys, the uh, the scenes where the person who makes people explode. I actually think that that came from the scenes here.
mm, Oh
where
yeah, yeah.
yeah, where it was just like making people explode.
Not
And
not throwing fireballs, not throwing rocks, but
mm-hmm,
using the power directly, using the weaves directly on the human body and what that can do,
mm-hmm.
which is not something that Aes Sedai do. So
Which I actually think The Boys is like the best telling of Robert Jordan's work than actually the Wheel of Time series.
that's an interesting perspective on it. Yeah, because you get the main character, the kid who's like the fish out of water here
Mm-hmm.
in this world of, and he gets thrown into this world of scheming, duplicity, and
Mm-hmm.
ludicrous amounts of power.
Yeah, The Boys is the telling of Robert Jordan better than Robert Jordan's actually official.
Yeah,
Uh,
branded thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, it it
Sorry to
starts.
throw you off there.
Yeah, but I was trying to regain my train of thought, which is in line with that, which is, um, so the opening of The Boys. If you haven't watched it, I won't spoil it, but it's shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Like the very opening of the first episode of the first season, it is shocking, and it lets you know this is what this series is going to be
Every
about.
episode of every season is shocking.
And and we get that here. The
Mm-hmm.
opening is quiet. It's just a lone rider coming up, and Galwin goes out to see what's going on, and it is a kid that is on the verge of death,
Mm-hmm.
delivers his report, and then falls over dead. And it's got from Galwin's perspective, you can clearly see how mature Galwin is and how quickly he has had to mature. But the good thing about his perspective, even though his story kind of annoys us, is you really get a feel for the younglings are aptly named. These
Mm-hmm.
are kids. These are kids who have had to grow up very fast. And so it starts with a dead kid. It starts with a dead kid and Galena being evil. Oh, go out and greet them if you think, let me get rid
Yeah,
of you.
anyone that wants to judge Gawain, and I do myself,
Hmm.
obviously,
Hmm.
as we've gone through this. Come down here to Houston and let's go out to Midtown together, and I will show you 30 Gawins in one bar, and then we'll go to the next bar and I'll show you another 30.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
It for for
he is annoying, but he's human.
for us, Galwin's story is our frustration with his story is more about how Sanderson ended it
Mm-hmm.
than how Jordan set it up. It it's sad and it's annoying sometimes, but it's entirely understandable.
Godwin would be a cuck.
You kind of see that at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, because he is that bought in to his, well, I mean that is what he's doing here with the younglings.
Well, yeah,
That is
yeah, yeah,
exactly
yeah,
what
yeah,
he's
yeah.
doing.
He exactly did that. He Now we're talking with a cuck, it's sexuality, but with Godwin, it's world, right?
Hmm.
It's different. Yeah.
He he uh makes himself subservient. He makes himself, his worldview, his basic underlying principles, all of those things become subservient to the White Tower
Mm-hmm.
and what Alida and the White Tower want.
Which is it's so crazy with I would say purposefully crazy with Galad, who went anti White Tower.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And we all love Galad more. That's the funny part of it.
uh, I like before the battle starts on the good guy's side, I like the, how he switches perspectives and, you know, shows us. So we see the setup for what Perrin and the others are going to see, but we don't actually see the battles start. When he jumps back to what's happening with Gawain and the Aes Sedai, it's already in the middle of it,
Mm-hmm.
which helps suck you in more. And then and you really, I mean, he sets the stage well with just a paragraph on 964, and then you get 40,000 Shido, Rourke muttered grimly on Perrin's other side. He even smelled grim. 40,000 at the least, and small satisfaction to know why they did not send more south. The Lord Dragon is down there, Dobrain asked, looking across Rourke. Perrin nodded. And you mean us to go in there and bring him out? Perrin nodded again, and Dobrain sighed. He smelled resigned, not afraid. We will go in, Lord Elbira, but I do not believe we will come out. But they're going in
Yeah.
because that's the kind of, uh,
Well, we look at these minor characters, and one of the kind of considerations is there's so many of them, but there are some that are just so good, and Dobrain is one of them.
and it's, I think we've referenced it before, but one of Critical Drinkers, Why Modern Movies Suck,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember which one it is, where he contrasts the scene from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan and Star Trek Into Darkness. And
Mm-hmm.
as he puts it, the reason Wrath of Khan works is because they're grown effing men doing what grown effing men would do. Whereas in Star Trek Into Darkness, they are mentally children, and they are thus acting like children.
No, but I'll put a more neuter perspective on it. Is they're so freaking good, but they're so freaking necessary. And Dobrain is one of those guys that keeps popping up, but we need him. We can't go forward without him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's a kind of glue that
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that
yeah,
brings
exactly. Yeah.
the real world, the mundane world as it existed before, and he ties it in with the fantastical,
Mm-hmm.
prophecy story thing that's going on now. So he's kind of that
Dobrain,
link.
Min, uh, who else?
Rourke to an extent, and that
Rourke, yeah.
especially through Fires of Heaven,
Well, you know
does
what?
that, plays
This
that
is
part.
actually this will be pushing it really, but I think Matt.
Yeah, because I mean, technically, there's some fantastical parts to him because the dice in his head,
Mm-hmm.
the different memories,
But
but
he's the one that glues everything together. He glues the outside of the Western world to everything else.
mhm.
So, okay, spoiler alert. Okay, spoiler alert, everybody. Not only does he bind the Shanshin, but he combats Shara. So
Good point. Yeah,
he is the person that extends everything beyond what we know.
I had not considered this before, but I think I think part of the point of the Foxhead medallion is enhancing and overemphasizing that he is the everyman.
He is the everyman.
Because not only does he not have any extraordinary power, like Rand's ability to channel, the girl's ability to channel, Perrin's wolfness, the power can't directly touch him.
Exactly. Nothing can touch him.
So
He
I hadn't thought of it
is
in those terms before.
he is the reaction to everything around you. You just got that after all these episodes?
No, but just the Foxhead medallion as part of that.
Okay, okay, okay. I
Yeah,
get it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The Foxhead, part of its purpose being there to really drive that point home. This isn't some, magical treasure that he found because he's a main character. This is an element of his character.
Mm-hmm. It is his character. The
All right.
pattern cannot touch him.
And zipping along here, when we switch back to Rand, because I'm trying to get to the end here,
Yeah.
um, Well, as I've said before, I like the way Jordan writes action. So I like the charge into the Aiel from with Perrin, and then I like that it he doesn't belabor the point. He gives you enough to know what to be able to see in your mind what's happening, and then he switches to Rand because that's something he can get into more granular detail with about um what Rand is doing and how he's doing it. But then also I like that that added to that is this sense of desperation. Um, and then we get to all right, so 971 then is where you know, we get from Rand's perspective what was referenced earlier by Galena about what happened when Rand saw Min had been captured as well. Uh, um, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, there we go. Okay, so down at the bottom of 971. Halfway to Min, he became aware of lightning bolts lancing out of the sky and fireballs exploding overhead. So he is in the middle of a war zone and he is so preoccupied he can't notice the artillery falling down around him.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big effing deal. He could smell wood burning, hear men shouting and screaming, the clash of metal, the cacophony of battle. He did not care if it was Tarman Gaiden. If he had killed men, gently he turned her over. So that phrase, I think, is so purposeful that
Mm-hmm.
what does it matter if he saves the world if he loses his soul? That I think that's Jordan telling us that on some level, Rand gets it. On some level, he knows he cannot lose his humanity. And he
Yeah, I was
cares
gonna
about
say the
that's how
same thing.
much
Is humanity is the goal, and humanity is the goal of the Dark One to overturn everything that's going on.
and Rand cares about men so much that I don't care if the last battle is going on right now. And I know that I mean he just got done yet almost coming to blows with one of his best friends because it's so important that I reach Tarman Gaiden that I'm using myself up, and so I'm going to use everybody else. But right now, I don't care. I have to make sure that Min is okay.
Which is funny because I think the whole purpose of the all these books is humanity is the goal, but at the same time, we can't plan it all out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The struggle between the Dark One and the Creator is the fact that neither works well in isolation.
Um, so you just have to do the best that you can do with what you have in front of you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Sorry if I
speaking of
derailed you there, but
speaking of which, no, it's because there was a connection there in my head, and I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. Is that that's part of Gawain's problem
hmm
is he cannot see what is right in front of him and deal with that because
he
he
has a
cannot
plan
stop
in his
he
head.
cannot stop from thinking
Yeah.
about the big picture and that he is critical to that big picture. And so you see it here 974 is when
Welcome to my dating life.
yeah. Suddenly Galwin was reining a bay stallion up not 10 steps in front of him, sword in hand, and 20 or more green-coated men riding at his heels. For a moment they stared at one another, and Rand prayed he would not have to harm Elaine's brother. Men, Galwin grated, I can take you out of here. She peeked past Rand's shoulder to shake her head. She was holding on to him so tightly he did not think he would have
I love men.
pried her loose had he wanted to. I'm staying with him, Galwin. Galwin, Elaine loves him. With the power in him, Rand could see the man's knuckles go white on his sword hilt. Aw, my potential in-laws hate me.
hmm
So Rand gets a He doesn't understand it. He doesn't know the details, but unfortunately, he gets a little peek here at why Godwin never replied.
Yeah, sorry, Scott. I don't hate Gawain. I understand him. And
Yeah.
I still don't like his end result, but at the same time, it's a rough life out there, man.
Um, and then Taim shows up, and
I actually love Taim, so
well, especially how brutal it is. I mean, how
hmm
harsh he is. Um, so this black guy in a black coat tries to kill Gawain, and Rand smacks him with a mace of air, and uh, he did not know the hard-faced young man who snarled at him, but the fellow wore both the sword and the dragon on his high collar, and Sidon filled him. I think that's one of those little breadcrumbs that Jordan is giving you that's going to
it's
be more
not a
important later.
breadcrumb. It's the title of a fucking book.
Well, true, but no, my point is it hasn't been that long since we had this in the scheme of things. It hasn't been that long since Rand went there to the Black Tower and gave out the pins, the sword and the dragon, and talked about the ranks. And there's already someone who has achieved max rank that Rand has never seen before. That's curious. That's a little nugget to file away. And then, in an instant, it seemed Taim was there. Blue and gold dragons twined around the sleeves of his black coat, staring down at this fellow. His collar bore neither pin. Another little interesting nugget. So rather than taking the tokens that Rand gave, he's doing something more grandiose to set himself apart.
hmm
Um, you would not strike at the Dragon Reborn, Gedwin, Taim said, at once soft and steely, and the hard-faced man scrambled to his feet, saluting his fist to heart. Okay, and then things start to get icky.
Start.
Well, I mean, uh, you know, go back to the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. So it just punches you in the face with the machine gun right into the landing craft. All right, well, that's bad enough. And as you're walking up, you're seeing people get, shot. You see, the flamethrower guy gets hit, so his pack explodes. But to me, that's all just punching you in the face. But then the uppercut comes in when you get the guy with his literal guts hanging out, and he's trying to hold them in, and he's screaming "Mama." And to me, that's what this is we've already gotten a sense of how brutal what's going on here is, but now it gets X-rated gory with what you referenced earlier of directly affecting the human body with those weaves of power
hmm
to the extent that people start throwing up. Like people
Yeah,
start
yeah,
leaning out of the saddle to throw up.
yeah. People were exploding. It's just,
People who have seen battle before,
uh-huh.
and we don't know who it is, but Rand hears someone behind him leaning out of the saddle to retch. These people are not strangers to battle and to its
Hey,
aftermath, and yet the the sight of what is happening here horrifies everyone.
hold on.
All right, where were we? Big hiccup there.
Yeah, big hiccup because it's my birthday today and my mom called. So,
Yeah. Okay, so let me regain my thoughts. There's a couple of things here in these last handful of pages that kind of jump out to me. The first one, this is one of those things I didn't notice on the first read because you get caught up in the scene of the Battle of Dumais Wells, is this is the first time so far as we know that the Ashaman have done anything but spar with each other and practice their technique. And yet they run like clockwork, and Taim just has to give them a couple of very short commands, and they unleash this hitherto for never seen uh destruction of the power.
Not never seen and foreshadowing. Not never seen because we saw it with Egwene and the Shanshan.
Did we?
Mm-hmm.
Did
Where
they
they
use the
blew
power like
people
this?
up.
I didn't remember that. I didn't
Yeah,
remember the Sanshin doing this.
because that's when we found out Egwene was strong with earth because she could blow up the ground underneath soldiers and stuff like that.
Okay. I didn't remember that. I remember now this in particular was foreshadowed with the blowing up the rock like it was a person's head.
Mm-hmm.
When we saw the training with Taim, but the world has not seen this before. Certainly this world that,
Yeah,
these people are just
the Western world. Well, I guess Shanshan is actually more west, even though they seem like east.
Mhm.
But well, it is a globe, you know. Sorry, flat
So,
earthers, but
well, it's a fantasy world, so uh it just derailed
I
me
guess
again.
Shara is the real east, but
But
it's
just think about how Taim has been training them and what he's been training them for, that they can step into this first large scale battle and just unleash destruction with pretty much no threat to themselves. They just step in and do it and just shock everyone. Um and then on top of that, he he adds the little cherry on top here at the end when Rand is telling Karuna, I forget nothing, I said, Rand said coldly. I said 6 could come, but I count 9. I said you would be on equal footing with the Tower emissaries, and for bringing 9, you will be. They are on their knees. I said, I kneel. Taim appeared as close to a smile as Rand had ever seen him. Kneel and swear to the Lord Dragon, he said softly, or you will be knelt. So not only does he step in seamlessly into the battle, but then he steps in seamlessly there to add that little nugget of
which goes back to the title of the whole thing.
which then leads into the epilogue, which is the other two little nuggets here is um and this kind of connects to one of Scott's comments from last time is what you were talking about when we were talking about Gawain of you can't control the big picture because there are all these variables completely out of your control.
Mm-hmm.
And in the epilogue scene, we get a couple of scenes with Egwene, with the Saladar Aes Sedai, and Egwene being, you know, cool as a cucumber and totally, you know, totally full of herself and in control with Logain when she's talking to Logain, and then she kind of gets smacked down because she's not in as much control as she thought. When not only does Mog Hideon get away, but she can tell by what she felt through the collar that a man who can channel opened the
Mm-hmm.
collar. So now she has that added wrinkle, as well as I think probably the most direct Jordan has been about Halima. Because if somehow you haven't figured it out before then, Halima is somehow a woman who can channel Sidon.
Yeah.
It's just
No, no,
just
we got that because she's Bethamel reborn. But as the color commentator, I will say that I'd fucking do her.
uh I don't know that that has been directly connected yet,
It
but
has.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew we knew Halima was Arangar,
Okay, well,
but I didn't know
you
if
know she's either Agenor or Bethmel. You know that she's one of the two.
one of the two, yeah.
Yeah.
Um all right, but oh, and then just as a bit of fun, we get the writer on top of the hill who this is the first time we've actually seen the Daughter of the Nine Moons, in that we know what the title is,
Mm.
or to an extent, because since that prophecy, Matt has kept asking women, "Does the daughter of the nine moons mean anything to you?" And here we have a Sanchin spy thinking about the daughter of the nine moons, and so we know that that's what it's connected to, and it's the first time we've gotten that.
Yeah.
But then,
Spoiler alert: a Shanshan spy we will see here in a little bit
um,
more.
but because the when we saw Matt, the last time we saw Matt, we skipped over that chapter. He makes this offhand remark about the daughter of the nine moons, and some random dude starts choking on his wine, um, because that does mean something to him.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the last thing to jump out at me here is the last thing in the whole book, which is Dermandred knelt in the pit of doom, and for once he did not care that Shaidar Haran watched his trembling with that eyeless, impassive gaze. Have I not done well, great lord? The great lord's laughter filled Demandred's head. Um, is Jordan trying to say that all of these things in the epilogue are somehow connected to Demandred, are somehow his doing?
Oh shit. Or are they the opposite? Like he should have been in this side of the world more often.
I mean, to me, ending the book, Lord of Chaos, with that sentence, with that scene,
No, you're right. I think you're right.
really connects the chaos of this book with Demandred.
Yeah. Which you actually, because it doesn't it start with that?
It starts, isn't the prologue Demandred walking into the pit of doom?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's bookended there.
Never got that. Uh but
So he is somehow manipulating what is going on here.
well we okay, so we need to go into spoilers to talk about this.
Yeah. So go away.
Go away, go away. We're going into spoilers. So one of the things with Demandred was his dealings with the Shido, with the memory boxes, and
That's Samael.
that's Semael.
Yeah, he's the one doing that.
What does Demandred do? He just disappears?
Yeah, he just disappears after this book, basically.
No,
But
no, no. I'm talking about after Crown of Swords. Doesn't Demandred do stuff with the Shido where he teleports them to different parts?
that's Samael setting them up. Because one of the things he does is he uses those fool boxes to drop groups of Shido in front of the approaching army. So he's doing it tactically for himself as well to slow down the approaching army.
No, I'm talking about where they cross streams with Perrin's army.
That is later.
Yeah, that's after Samael is dead.
We'll have to look at that because I don't
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
Demandred.
Because what we see of Demandred that I remember, what we see of Demandred
No,
after
it's
this.
Moradin.
Okay.
It's either Demandred or Moradin that does that.
What we
That
see of Demandred after this that I remember is his scheming with Simir Haj and
mm-hmm.
Masana.
Mm-hmm. And they're talking to the Shido wise ones.
And uh so that's why I think Demandred is bookended here, because we get a little bit of that. We get it more explicitly later, but we get a little bit of that setup here that Demandred is in this triumvirate with Simirhaj and Masana, and they're scheming together. So that's also a hint of what Simirhaj and Masana are doing that have
Mm-hmm.
connected this chaos to Demandred. Because all of these things you've got the Aes Sedai and the messes that are happening there, and then you've got the Black Tower, and this is one of the big things that fueled the Tamaindrid theory
Mm-hmm.
was Taim showing up there at Dumai's Well to wreak havoc and then help make the Aes Sedai kneel, which is going to cause all kinds of problems between Aes Sedai and Rand. It's going to drive that wedge even deeper. And he was a major component of that.
Well, that's the question. We were led to believe he's the major component of that. But what did he actually do if he's not tame?
It's strongly hinted later that Demandred is the one who brought Tame in. That he's the one who recruited
Except
him.
he's extremely jealous of him.
Guys, I mean, that's what we've been talking about is he brings this guy in who then decides that, Taim is jealous of Demandred because he has that place that he covets. And then Demandred starts to get jealous of Taim
Because
because
he's basically the same person.
he think yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
because
And equally as strong.
how dare
Yeah.
this uncivilized buffoon think that he can be one of the Forsaken? I mean, we are gods.
Yeah.
And you're rising above yourself. Um so that's part of where that comes in. But there's a lot of stuff that happens in this prologue, and I really feel like
It's
it's or epilogue, I mean.
we can make a modern analogy here. Brett Favre is Demandred and Aaron Rodgers is Taim.
Eh. You also have Phalion, um who was sent here by Malkidian, but she seems to be getting orders from other people. So that
Yeah.
could be Demandred could be connected there, theoretically through Masana. Something else I had not really thought of before, because this has always bothered me, is who sent the golem after Herod fell and why? Well, Jordan
That
seems to be implying that Demandred did it.
that's been a big question for a lot of
But
people.
but why and
And how
how
did
did
he
he
know
know?
who Aaron Herod Fell was? Yeah.
Yeah. Presumably it is Fell had to be killed because Rand was talking to him about how to reseal the Dark One's prison and was onto something, right? So the last note we had about having to clear away the
But
rubble,
who's the dark friend in the
that close to Fell that
yeah.
that they would be able to find that out. Although it I guess it could be pretty common knowledge, or it would be common knowledge that Rand visits the school quite a bit because he doesn't just
Yeah,
travel there.
but at the
He
same
rides
time you
there.
would still have to have inside knowledge on what
But
was
then
being said.
someone
Yeah.
within the school would know that every time he visits, he spends time with Phil.
But at the same time, there are only so many golems, and we get one in the Matt story is the same one because it implies that it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it implies that he's being ordered by a couple of different Forsaken.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that that final sentence is uh Jordan's hint on who killed Phil was having Demandred, laughing and boasting about all this stuff at the end.
See, my opinion was always it was the first hint on Ishii coming back.
That Moradin was the one.
Yeah, because he's the cerebral one. He's the one that would actually know that. Demandred
That's a
was
good
a
point.
general.
Yeah.
He wouldn't know that. He wouldn't know that the seals were a big deal.
But then the next scene we get is the Sanshin spy thinking about the daughter of the Nine Moons. Um, and that's part of Demandred because that Simirhaj is the one pushing that
Mm-hmm.
as they're coming, as the Sanshin are on their way back. But then the next thing we get is Malkidian getting freed by Halima, which makes you wonder, is Demandred or it must Demandred through Masana? Is Masana giving Arangar orders because of the connection to the tower there? Is that part of Masana's kind of portfolio?
Yeah, and this is my problem with Demandred is he was played as the number two, so he was like supposed to be the big bad guy, but Ishii was really the big bad guy, and Demandred actually, at the end of the day, again, spoilers if you're still listening, Demandred at the end of the day was a prop.
But
Land got to beat him up.
I think that's in keeping with who he was and his relationship with the Ishamael. Is Ishamael's the one who got it on a metaphysical level,
Mm-hmm.
and Demandred
Yeah, but what we're
was
talking about
obsessed
in
with the
these books
physical.
is on the metaphysical level.
True.
Yeah, so
About chaos reigning.
yeah, so when we get to the end, yeah, you're right. But when we get to what we're talking about right now, it's not his style. He was too simple for that. He was
Well,
just the next best thing.
not entirely simple. I mean, he was uh espionage and misdirection is a major component to generalship. So he would on some level. No, again, I think it still ties in with the physical versus the metaphysical is in Demander from Demander's point of view, the chaos has the tangible benefit of keeping his enemies, his opponents off balance. Whereas Ishamael looks at the chaos as unraveling the pattern itself. That's the point of the chaos to Ishamael. Is he's looking at it on a deeper metaphysical level.
I see that. I do see that. Now, what we got to talk about is Rand, though, where Rand fits into this, because he was just put through something that none of us can identify with. At least most of none of us can identify with.
Yeah.
And not only in his own torture, but torture of someone he loved.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going forward. Yes, this is something that Demandred would have done because he was a psychopath, right? Let the Lord of Chaos rule, and you have just put the Lord of Chaos, who is the actual Lord of Chaos, Demandred would have thought he was, but Rand is the Lord of Chaos.
Because he's the one who's actually driving the action of this continent. Everything revolves around him.
Everything revolves around Rand. And where he turns is the direction of the world. And he just went through not only himself being destroyed from the inside out, but then loved ones, which is where Min really, really, really makes her impact here, because he loves Min. I would say actually more than he loves Elaine and Avienda.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a disappointment in the end of the book because they make it a trifecta, but I think he loves Min before he loves the other
Yeah,
two.
that's one of the failings of the whole relationship is Rand says, and we get from his perspective that he thinks it as well, that he loves them all equally, but we don't
He
see it
appreciates them all
exactly.
equally, but he
He
doesn't love
spends
them all
and
equally.
a large part of that is because he spends so much more time with Min alone. He does
Mm-hmm.
not get that time with the others to let that relationship grow and build.
And she speaks to him on a different level than the other ones do. Avienda speaks to him as an Aiel. Elaine speaks to him as a ruler. Min speaks to him as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And that changes everything, which is why she's the perfect person to be in this section.
Yes, because she's the foil to the chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Because the entire point of inflicting that on Rand is to make him harder. That we're about to see Cadsuin, and we're about to get that directly. The metaphor of hard versus strong. That make him harder, make him brittle. And she's the one that is helping him cling to his humanity so that he is not
Make
completely
him laugh,
lost.
make him cry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that he is not completely lost. She's the thing that keeps that thread tied to the world.
Which is this annoyed me because I looked through a lot of Wheel Time memes going through here because I want them for
Yeah.
our cover stories. And there were a lot of them that were Cat Swain replaces Moraine. Da, 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 da. I'm like, no, she's different. She is
Hmm.
completely different because Moraine had a certain thing about her that Rand needed. But Cadsuane was the humanity that Rand needed. Where so Moraine was so he was a human being coming out of the two rivers, where he was just a shepherd taking care of his crops and everything. And Moraine needed to expose him to the real world, where Cadsuane was the person who needed to bring him back to the shepherd. It's different people. I hate that people are saying, "Oh, well, we just had a replacement person." It's like,
Well,
no.
what? Why does Moraine do what she does, and why does it alienate
Mm-hmm.
Rand? Because they had a plan. Sawant
Mm-hmm.
says it in that opening of the Great Hunt. We had a plan, Moraine. Well, what was the plan? The plan was to take this shepherd, bring him to the White Tower, and groom him to be an emperor.
Mm-hmm.
That is the best way to destroy Rand as a person and alienate him from you, is to try and do that. And that's
And to
that's
have them
why.
as the same person would be as contrived as I'm going to go into sacrilege here, as Gandalf is in The Lord of the Rings. It's one person that does everything throughout time. Whereas in The Wheel of Time, we have a person that is a catalyst, and then another person that comes in and says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Mhm.
We're humans. We need to do this." So,
And that's why Cadsuane, allies with Cerelia, because
mm-hmm,
that is part of Cerelia's point too, is we need to make sure that the world that we save is a world worth living in.
mm-hmm.
And if
And
Rand turns dark, it won't be.
yeah, and this is where wokeness gets in the way because Cerelia is like that indigenous thought, right? Cadsuane is the Western thought, and they have to work together because we live in the world we live in.
Mm,
And where wokeness gets in the way is it's all about the indigenous thought. It's Avatar over and over and over and over again. And in Wheel of Time, we get the merging of the two. What's the best of both worlds?
mm.
And at the end of the day, the best of both worlds is this compromise that says humanity goes forward versus we have to just cut everything or we are industrial all the way through the end or all of these stupid things that we
Yeah. False
put in our head.
dichotomies. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one or the other. You're with us or against us. Well, no, not quite. Not quite. All right, let's hurry up and wrap this up because I got stuff to do and we've been going on a while. Um, So on to Scott's comments from last time. Proof of why you don't put 18-year-old women in charge, or you know, 18-year-old people in charge. But let's be sexist. It can work better with males because they more naturally establish a hierarchy and because they are more goal oriented of, all right, this is the thing we need to do. Oh, high school sports. The leader of the team is the quarterback. Well, he's a 16, 17-year-old kid like all the others, but they're all focused on a relatively simple goal together. So it works better than it would if you, as you said ad nauseum, women form coalitions. And well, there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of time. There's a lot that has to go into that.
Well,
Versus the let's go score a touchdown.
let's look at the data though. Where women take charge and they do well, something like nursing, where a take care of everybody mindset actually works out better.
Mhm.
So So yeah. It's time and place, right?
Um, Speaking of places, this is one of the few places in the series where Lane's character is bad. Her treatment of Matt is juvenile and petty. Um, and it, I don't know exactly what he was trying to do, but it makes Elaine really unlikable
Hmm.
in that
Yeah, it
time.
takes a while to get her back too.
Mhm.
Yeah, it takes probably about 2 books to get her back. No. I would say this is where she went down because you
Because
don't
then,
even you don't
yeah,
even get her back before she goes into her.
and I think that's probably a big reason why we have talked about we go when she gets to her Camelin story after the Ibudar stuff is because it starts there in that chapter where she's being
Hmm.
juvenile and petty, and then it never recovers. She has moments with Avienda, but then she's only really likable in those interactions with Avienda as they're learning to be first
Hmm.
sisters. But then every time she goes and interacts with anyone else, she's right back where she was.
Yeah, and that's the hard part because you only get her from the perspective of herself or Avienda.
Hmm.
And realistically, I think Sanderson wrote Matt the worst, but Avienda was actually the second worst when he wrote. So
Yeah.
it was it,
I think it's not an accident that she doesn't show up a lot in the last 3 books.
yeah, I liked his style with some of the bit characters like uh Iteralda. I like that. I like some of his style with the back and forth, but with Avienda and Elaine and Matt especially, he he really dropped the ball on a
Hmm.
lot of those.
Speaking of ball dropping, I'm I'm not sure I agree here with Scott. I don't know that Jordan really dropped the ball here, and we talked about this a little bit last time. Matt and Saladar, I think this is one of the places where Jordan lets the story get adrift a bit. I think Matt should have gone back to the band and just shadowed the Aes Sedai rather than playing Egwene's game. More example of just what a horrible prig Egwene is. Jordan letting her set the game and the terms here just put my teeth on edge. I kind of agree, but then you have to look at it from Matt's perspective.
Hmm.
He knows that Egwene is trying to set the rules of the game. He knows what's happening, but the whole reason it makes sense is that conversation with Tom.
Hmm.
That's
Well,
that's Tom comes
not
in to
only
be
that
the
is
mentor.
we go to sexy time with Sam is the things we do for women. He has no love interest here, but your personality still plays through. So the things I would do for my sister, the things I would do for my mother, the things I would do for uh, just random girl in my life.
That's a good analogy because Nynaeve is like a big sister and Egwene is like
Hmm.
a little sister.
Yeah. The things you would do for just females in your
And then
life.
Elaine is his best friend's girlfriend, as far as he knows.
Yeah. It's just that's Matt's character. And I feel that because that's why I identify with Matt, because I've put myself in stupid situations for stupid reasons with girls, which ended up being not even in the right, but at the same
Hmm.
time, I did it. You know,
Trying to save her
it,
from the blacksmith.
yeah. You just do it.
I hadn't really thought of it before when we were talking last time. I think that's the undercurrent of Tom's story, with saving the woman who turned out to be a terrible person. Is there's an undercurrent there? There's an unspoken insinuation of, yeah, I know and you know that Egwene is being, to use Scott's word, a prig. She's being obnoxious, but this thing also needs to get done. What Elaine and Nynaeve are doing is important. So, yes, you know, and I know that the girls are being obnoxious here, but set that aside and see what you can do to help them accomplish their goals.
Well, Matt needed that from Tom because he had a horrible father who was
I hate you.
abusive and a drunkard. And
Yeah, I hate you. All right, so last comment. I think we've already addressed this a bit. I hate the plot point where the Aes Sedai immediately blame Rand for the attack on that sister. They have no evidence, and it's only based on their prejudices against the dragon. I'm curious what you think after our conversation here, where we talked about that with Min, as she's the only one who goes, "Hey, hold on a second. Something isn't right here. We
hmm
should figure out what's going on." She's the only one between Rand's camp and the Aes Sedai who says this doesn't seem right. But that's because she's really the only one without an agenda except Rand the person.
Well, and just think of this in any argument you've ever had where two of you are arguing over something, and there's one thing in the middle that has uh kind of a relatively different perspective that you could take depending on what actually happened, right? And we've all been there where we're arguing over something, and 2 days later you find out some new information and you're like,
Or how about have you ever seen or been part of an argument where the two sides basically agree and yet they're arguing because they got hung up on one thing and they're yelling at each other and it's but we in the end we both want the same thing. So why are we yelling at each other? Well,
mm-hmm,
because you get hung up on that one thing and it snowballs.
mm-hmm, yeah. So this is a thing where we have to get out of our head with modern technology where we can go look anything up, right?
Mm.
And both sides don't have the information that the other side has, and both sides don't have all the information that they should have, right? And they're fighting over the same thing. Cooler heads would be nice, but we wouldn't have chaos
But Min can't be the cooler head because she's a
because
double agent,
she's
so
a
she
double
can't
agent.
reveal
Yeah.
that. And Varen is the cooler head, but she has a sly smile because
Mm-hmm.
I think she knows full well or strongly suspects what has happened here, but she's nudging them in that direction because
She is
she
also
wants
under
this.
orders.
Well, she has to probably follow some black orders,
Uh-huh.
yes, but her true motives as like a triple agent, her true motives are to see Rand succeed. And she understands that the Aes Sedai are too
that
insular and
bru-
too narrowly
that
focused.
brutalizing him is the way he succeeds.
Well,
This
she
is this
understands.
is one of the failings of Egwene. Is Egwene is supposed to be super smart,
Mhm.
and the moment Varen reveals she's a double agent, Egwene should have been like, that whole stuffed in a box thing you were part of should have been there, but it
Well,
wasn't there.
she was on the other side theoretically. She was on those who were going to
No, no,
rescue
no,
Rand.
but
She was on that
Egwene should have
side, but
figured that out. Yeah.
yeah. But the whole point, I think Varen's reasons for kind of nudging things along to encourage what happened to happen is she knows that in order for Rand to succeed, he cannot be an Aes Sedai puppet. And pretty much all the Aes Sedai want him to be a puppet. As I said earlier, they're treating him like they would any other
hmm
ruler. And
So
and
you're
he's
going for
not.
the rebound effect. The
That
problem is
yeah.
there's more than Rand.
Well, as part of Morana's outburst there, she's one of the early ones to get it, as we
hmm
talked about, and that carries forward as she becomes a real asset to Rand later. Varen already gets it that you can't treat him like you would anybody else. We are no longer the ones in charge here.
hmm
Anyway, well, that's all I got for that. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, and then we'll be
No.
on to Crown of Swords next time.
Yep.
Whenever
Yep.
whenever next time is, it will be the beginning of Crown of Swords. I just remembered what the opening to Crown of Swords is, so that'll be interesting. I'm pretty sure the prologue is Dumai's Well from the Shido perspective.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to
So
read that one again before we go over it. But
yeah, I'm taking it with me to skim back through it to be ready. So I'll be ready when we're ready to go.
all right, awesome. We'll see you guys next time.
Adios.
Adios.